This breaking news is currently shaking Nigeria's political space. Just when everyone thought Atiku Abubakar was stepping back for Peter Obi in 2027, the former vice president has made a U-turn. He says he's ready to contest again, and this time, it's inside the coalition of the African Democratic Congress, ADC. What does this mean for Obi, the coalition, and Nigeria's future? Let's break it down. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more breaking news and interesting stories. For a long time after the 2023 election, the mood in Nigeria's political space seemed to shift in a new direction. People were tired, people were exhausted from the endless back and forth of old political battles. Many Nigerians were openly saying that it was time for a different style of politics, a younger energy, and a cleaner kind of leadership. And in that conversation, one name kept rising to the top: Peter Obi. The man who shook the 2023 polls with his movement, the man whose campaign turned into a wave that captured young people, professionals, even Nigerians abroad. For a while, it looked like Obi was the one person who could truly unite a tired country. Atiku Abubakar, the former vice president, was at the same time sending signals that surprised many people. After so many years of running, after contesting again and again, many thought he was finally going to bow out gracefully. He had tried in 1993, in 2007, in 2011, in 2015, in 2019, and again in 2023. The story was always the same: Atiku entered the race with big promises, heavy campaigns, and massive spending, but he never made it to Aso Rock. For a man who had given decades of his life to politics, many believed 2023 was his last card. And for the first time, it seemed like Atiku himself was beginning to agree. That feeling grew even stronger when talk of a coalition began to spread. The African Democratic Congress, ADC, started discussions to bring together strong opposition voices into one family. It wasn't just another small party alliance that usually collapses before election day. No, this time it had weight. It had Atiku, it had Obi, it had other heavy names who had influence in different regions. For Nigerians who were desperate for unity in the opposition, it looked like a dream forming. And in that dream, most people saw Obi as the natural candidate. Why? Because Obi had the energy. He had the youth. He had the momentum. Atiku, on the other hand, was already seen as an elder statesman, someone who could play the role of mentor, kingmaker, an experienced advisor. Nigerians thought the picture was already clear: Atiku would step back, Obi would step forward, and the coalition would be strong enough to challenge the ruling party in 2027. Everywhere people talk politics, that was the expectation. On the streets, in newspapers, on radio talk shows, and of course on social media, the chatter was the same. Atiku was going to take the elder role, Obi was going to take the driver's seat. Even loyal supporters of Atiku began to soften to the idea. They said maybe it was time for him to give way, maybe it was time for him to let the younger man carry the torch. After all, what mattered most was not who carried the flag, but whether the coalition could finally bring power back to the people. And for Obi supporters, the story sounded even sweeter. They believed this was destiny coming full circle. In 2019, Obi had been Atiku's running mate. He was the vice presidential candidate under the PDP ticket. Many Obi supporters felt he was sidelined back then, that his energy was not fully used. But in 2027, they imagined a reversal: Obi as the main candidate, Atiku now standing behind him, showing maturity, showing support, and proving he could put the country before personal ambition. That was the calm before the storm. A calm filled with hope, filled with imagination, filled with political calculations that seemed almost too perfect to be true. People started to draw up the numbers in their heads. If Atiku gave Obi his northern structure, if Obi maintained his southern and middle belt strength, and if the coalition pulled in smaller parties with their regional bases, the ruling party would finally face a serious opponent. It would be the type of united opposition that Nigeria had not seen in years. Conversations about 2027 were starting to sound different. For once, there was excitement instead of exhaustion. For once, people weren't just shaking their heads in frustration, they were actually saying maybe, just maybe, things could change. And the face of that hope was Peter Obi, but the silent hand behind it was Atiku Abubakar, who many thought had finally found peace in stepping aside. Even in the ADC meetings, reports were flying that Atiku was more focused on the big picture than on personal ambition. He was said to be the one urging everyone to think about unity, to think about stability, and to think about giving Nigerians a new path. Those whispers spread fast. They made the idea even more believable. This was no longer just a dream on social media, it was becoming a serious political arrangement. By the middle of 2024, the mood was almost settled. Nigerians who never believed in coalition started to say maybe this time was different. Civil society groups, religious leaders, and even foreign observers were watching carefully. Everyone knew that if Atiku truly stepped aside, it would change the game. It would show a new kind of maturity in Nigerian politics, the kind that puts the country before ambition. But unknown to many, while the surface looked calm, there were silent tensions boiling underneath. Atiku's loyal circle was not completely at peace with the idea of him stepping down. For them, their boss was not just another politician. He was the man they had followed for decades, the man they had invested in, the man whose dream they had tied their future to. To them, 2027 was not about Obi or the coalition, it was still about Atiku. They believed he had one more fight left in him, one more chance to prove himself. Yet those voices were drowned out by the louder sound of hope. Nigerians wanted to believe in the coalition. They wanted to believe in the calm. And for a moment, it truly looked like history was about to be made. That was the calm before the storm. A calm so convincing, so smooth, that nobody expected the sudden twist that was coming. When people thought they had understood the new political arrangement, when Nigerians were already relaxing with the idea that Atiku Abubakar had finally agreed to step aside, the story changed. Out of nowhere, a wave of fresh reports began to move through political circles, and the headline was shocking: Atiku was not stepping aside. He was not retiring. Instead, he was preparing himself to contest again in 2027. This was not just a small rumor whispered in corridors. It came directly from Atiku himself. In conversations, in political meetings, and even in private briefings that later became public, the former vice president made it clear that he still believed he had the strength, the influence, and the right to make another attempt. For many Nigerians, it was like a cold splash of water on the face. How could this be? Only weeks earlier, everyone was celebrating the picture of unity, the image of Atiku backing Obi, the story of a coalition with one strong candidate. Now the man who was supposed to be the mentor was announcing that he was still very much in the race. The U-turn did not just confuse people. It threw the entire conversation into chaos. Suddenly, all the certainty around the ADC coalition was under question. Was Atiku serious, or was he simply testing the waters? Was he making a strategic move to strengthen his bargaining power, or was he truly determined to take another shot at the presidency? Nobody could say for sure, but what became clear was that the calm before the storm was over. To understand the shock, you have to remember the history. Atiku has built one of the most enduring political careers in Nigeria. He has a loyal base, especially in the north. He has the money, the networks, and the persistence of someone who never gives up. Every time he has lost, he has picked himself up and tried again. For his supporters, this is the mark of a true fighter. But for his critics, it is the sign of a man who cannot let go of ambition. When the news of his U-turn broke, Nigerians were divided straight down the middle. Some were angry, asking why Atiku could not simply support Obi and prove he could put Nigeria first. Others, especially those in his inner circle, were thrilled, saying that their leader was back in the game and still had unfinished business. But what made this twist even more dramatic was that Atiku was not planning to contest under the old PDP platform. He was now in the same ADC coalition that had been widely seen as Obi's platform of hope. In other words, both men were suddenly inside the same political house, both claiming to have the right to lead, both preparing to run. For Nigerians watching from outside, it was like a movie plot. Nobody knew how the coalition could survive such a clash. The timing of Atiku's statement was also interesting. Just when Obi supporters were celebrating his growing influence in the coalition, Atiku stepped in with his U-turn. It almost looked like a calculated move, as if he wanted to remind everyone that he was still the bigger figure, the man with more history and more established structures. It sent a message not just to Obi but to the entire coalition: do not count me out. This announcement spread quickly through the political landscape. Newspapers carried it, television stations debated it, and social media caught fire with reactions. Some people felt betrayed, saying Atiku had misled Nigerians into thinking he was ready to retire. Others mocked him, saying he had become addicted to contesting and could not stop himself. But his loyalists defended him with passion. They argued that Nigeria still needed his experience, his northern reach, and his financial strength. To them, it was not about age or ambition, but about stability. Inside the coalition, tension began to rise. The ADC was meant to be a united front, but now it was looking like a divided house. Political analysts started asking difficult questions. Could the coalition survive two heavyweights fighting for the same ticket? Could Obi and Atiku truly work together, or was this the beginning of the end for the ADC dream? Some insiders claimed that Atiku's move was less about winning the presidency and more about bargaining power. By declaring his intention to run, he could negotiate for stronger influence, for control of certain structures, or even for a possible deal that would favor him if the coalition eventually settled on Obi. But others were not so sure. They pointed to Atiku's long history of persistence and ambition, saying that he would not declare unless he truly meant it. This uncertainty created fear among Nigerians who had placed their hope in the coalition. Ordinary people started to worry that the same old pattern was about to repeat itself. Instead of unity, there would be division. Instead of one strong candidate, there would be too many contenders. And instead of challenging the ruling party effectively, the opposition would once again break into pieces. But whether Nigerians liked it or not, the U-turn was real. Atiku was back in the race, and he was speaking with confidence. In his statements, he did not sound like a man who was preparing to step aside. He sounded like a man who believed 2027 was his chance, his final opportunity to fulfill a lifelong ambition. For some, that determination was admirable. For others, it was selfish. But either way, it had changed the story completely. And so the calm before the storm ended in a dramatic fashion. The coalition that once looked solid was now full of cracks. Obi, who thought the path was clearing, now had to face the reality that the elder statesman was still standing in his way. Atiku, who was supposed to play the role of supporter, was once again the rival. The U-turn left everyone asking the same burning questions. Was Atiku truly ready to go all the way, or was this just political chess? Was he preparing for a fight, or was he setting himself up for a deal? Could Obi and Atiku even stand in the same coalition without tearing it apart? Nobody had the answers yet, but one thing was certain: the stage for 2027 had suddenly become more dramatic, more unpredictable, and more explosive. The U-turn was not just another news story. It was a turning point. It was the moment when Nigerians realized that the dream of a united opposition was not going to be simple. It was the moment when hope collided with ambition. And it was the moment when the countdown to 2027 truly began. Atiku's U-turn has done more than just change the political conversation. It has raised one of the biggest questions in Nigeria's political history: can two giants truly share the same political house without tearing it apart? Can Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi stand together under the same coalition when both of them are clearly aiming for the #1 seat? This is the heart of the storm. Nigerians now find themselves watching a political drama that could decide the future of 2027 before the campaigns even begin. The question is no longer about whether the ruling party will face competition. The question has become whether the opposition itself can even survive its own internal struggle. Atiku's return to the race has created a strange picture. On one side, you have Obi, the symbol of freshness, the voice of the youth, the man whose campaign in 2023 shook the system to its core. On the other side, you have Atiku, the seasoned politician, the man with the northern base, the money, and the decades of networks that can make or break elections. These are not small players. They are both heavyweight contenders. The problem is that they are now standing on the same stage. Coalitions in Nigeria are already fragile by nature. History shows that many alliances collapse before election day because of personal ambition, regional interests, or last-minute betrayals. Nigerians know this too well. They have seen coalitions rise with fanfare and fall apart with bitterness. That is why Atiku's U-turn feels so dangerous to many people. It has put pressure on the ADC coalition long before the race has even started. The big question is this: will Atiku and Obi find a way to work together, or will this turn into another power struggle that divides the opposition and gifts victory to the ruling party? Let us start with the first scenario. If Atiku truly intends to contest all the way, then the coalition could be heading for a storm. Both men have strong followings. Both men believe they have a chance. And both men are not known for easily stepping down once they declare. That kind of clash is not easy to manage. Imagine primary elections within the coalition. Imagine delegates trying to choose between Obi and Atiku. The battle could get ugly. Supporters could fight one another, accusations could fly, and the sense of unity could evaporate before Nigerians even step into the voting booths. If that happens, the ruling party does not need to do much. It only has to sit back and watch the opposition destroy itself. Because once there is no unity, once there is no single face to carry the coalition, the opposition vote will scatter. And in Nigerian politics, a scattered opposition is the fastest way to hand easy victory to the ruling side. That is why many Nigerians are worried. They fear history might repeat itself again. Now, let us think about the second scenario. Some people believe Atiku's U-turn is not really about running all the way. They say it is political strategy. By declaring that he is still in the race, Atiku keeps himself relevant. He strengthens his bargaining power inside the coalition. Instead of being pushed aside quietly, he forces everyone to pay attention to him, to negotiate with him, and to give him a seat at the table. In this version of the story, Atiku may not truly want to be president again. He may want to protect his influence, secure positions for his loyalists, and perhaps even position himself as a kingmaker if the coalition eventually settles on Obi. But even this second scenario comes with its own risks. Nigerians are tired of political games. They want clarity. They want honesty. If Atiku plays too much politics with this U-turn, he could lose the trust of ordinary people who already see him as someone who has tried too many times. Nigerians might say enough is enough, this is no longer ambition, this is selfishness. And once the people lose trust, no amount of strategy can save a politician. The third scenario is the most hopeful one. It is the idea that somehow, Atiku and Obi will find a genuine way to work together. It would mean both men swallowing pride, both men putting ambition aside, and both men focusing on the bigger goal of rescuing Nigeria from its current struggles. If they manage to do that, the coalition could become unstoppable. Imagine Obi as the face of the youth and reform, and Atiku as the wise elder guiding from behind. Imagine northern votes combining with southern votes, experience combining with fresh energy. That kind of unity could change everything. It could give Nigerians the first real chance at a government that is both fresh and stable. But here is the problem: Nigerian politics has never been famous for humility. It has never been famous for leaders who step back quietly. It is built on personal ambition, on power struggles, on who gets what and who controls what. That is why the big question remains unresolved. Nobody knows if these two men can truly stand together without clashing. For the ordinary Nigerian, the drama feels like a movie. People are already debating on the streets and in markets. Some say Atiku has earned the right to contest because he has invested his whole life in politics. Others say no, this is Obi's time, and Atiku should step aside with dignity. Some are simply shaking their heads, saying this is proof that politicians care more about themselves than the people. Whichever way you look at it, the U-turn has forced the country into a season of uncertainty. Everyone is watching. Everyone is waiting. And everyone knows that the decisions made inside the coalition in the next months will determine whether Nigeria faces a real contest in 2027 or another repeat of the old story where division kills the dream before it even starts. So, what happens next? The coalition has two choices. Either it manages this storm carefully, with negotiations, with compromises, with maturity, or it falls apart under the weight of ambition. The big question is not just about Atiku and Obi. It is about Nigeria itself. Can the country's opposition finally rise above selfish ambition and give Nigerians a clear alternative? Or will it crumble under the same old politics that has frustrated the nation for decades? Every Nigerian watching knows this: unity is power. Division is weakness. Atiku's U-turn has created confusion, but it has also created opportunity. If handled wisely, it could push the coalition to define itself more clearly and show Nigerians it can survive even under pressure. If handled badly, it could destroy the coalition before the journey even begins. At the end of the day, it all comes down to choice. Atiku must decide whether his ambition is more important than his legacy. Obi must decide whether he is ready to fight a political giant or build a bridge with him. And Nigerians must decide whether they are willing to forgive old wounds and rally behind one voice. The big question remains unanswered. But one thing is certain: Atiku's U-turn has turned 2027 into a political battlefield long before a single campaign poster is printed. The storm has begun, and every Nigerian is now watching closely to see who will bend, who will stand, and who will fall.